Have you ever felt like your life is cluttered with things that simply don't serve you? Things that drain your energy and hold you back from being who you truly want to be? Maybe you've wondered why you keep carrying these burdens, why you tolerate situations, relationships, and habits that clearly aren't making your life better. Today, I'm going to share something powerful with you. The greatest act of rebellion isn't making noise or seeking attention. It's eliminating in silence everything that doesn't add value to your life. In this video, I'm going to reveal 15 specific things you should eliminate from your life right now if you want to experience true freedom and peace. These aren't just abstract concepts. These are concrete elements that are quietly destroying your potential, stealing your energy, and keeping you trapped in cycles of stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. And here's the best part. You don't need anyone's permission to let them go. You don't need to make a big announcement or wait for the perfect moment. You can start today in silence without excuses. Before we dive in, I want to share a story that illustrates the wisdom we'll explore today. There was once a young merchant who traveled from city to city selling his wares. Over the years, he accumulated an enormous collection of possessions, goods he thought he might need someday, gifts from people he'd met, items he kept just because he'd always had them. His cart became so heavy that his journey grew slower and slower. Each hill became a mountain. Each mile felt like 10. One day, while crossing a desert, a terrible sandstorm arose. The wind was fierce, and his overloaded cart began to sink into the sand. He struggled for hours, pushing and pulling, but the weight was simply too much. As exhaustion set in and desperation grew, he made a difficult but necessary decision. He began to let go. First, he discarded the items he hadn't used in years, then the things he'd kept out of. Obligation. Finally, even objects he'd held onto for sentimental reasons, but no longer needed. With each item he released, his cart became lighter. The storm continued, but he could now move forward. And when the storm finally passed and he reached the next city, he arrived exhausted but safe. The other merchants asked him how he'd survived such a fierce storm with his cart intact. He smiled calmly and said, "There are moments in life when we cling to things we don't need, objects, memories, or people that only add weight to our journey. Only when we decide to let go of the unnecessary in silence and without drama do we find the freedom to move forward with ease." The moral of this story is clear. In life, there are many things we need to eliminate in silence to move forward. Sometimes the load we carry prevents us from navigating with lightness, and only by releasing that weight do we discover our true path. So if you're ready to start living with true freedom, to reclaim your energy and your peace, stay with me. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for what needs to go. And remember, what you leave behind says more about you than what you try to hold on to. Before we start with the first item, if you find this type of content valuable, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to stay updated. Let's begin. Number 1, the need for external validation. How many decisions in your life have been made based on what others might think? How many dreams have you postponed? How many authentic expressions have you suppressed because you feared judgment, criticism, or disapproval? The need for external validation is like a parasite that feeds on your potential. It whispers in your ear every time you consider doing something different or bold. What will they think? What will they say? This need keeps you performing for an audience that isn't even paying attention. Most people are too busy dealing with their own insecurities to judge you, yet you remain paralyzed, adapting your life to what you believe others expect from you. You wear the mask that best fits the expectations of the moment, at work, with friends, even on social media. But what about the real you? The one hidden beneath layers of false smiles and borrowed opinions? The Stoics taught us something profound. We cannot control what others think of us, but we can control how we respond to it. This sounds simple, but it requires constant practice of introspection and courage. It's about learning to live for yourself, to make decisions that make you happy, not just to please others. Life is too short to be lived in the shadow of others' opinions. Start small. Begin eliminating in silence the things in your life that exist only to please others. Did you choose a career that doesn't satisfy you because it seemed like the right choice? Are you maintaining relationships that drain you because you're afraid of what people will say if you walk away? Are you suppressing your true interests because they don't fit someone else's idea of who you should be? Let these go. Not with drama, not with grand announcements. Just quietly stop giving them power over you. When you eliminate the need for external validation, something remarkable happens. You discover who you actually are beneath all those layers of performance. You find your authentic voice, your genuine interests, your real values. And paradoxically, when you stop seeking approval, you often find that you gain more respect from others. People are drawn to authenticity. They can sense when someone is living from their true self rather than from a desperate need to be accepted. Number 2, toxic relationships. There's a saying I love: there's no one more blind than someone who refuses to see. I'm certain you've heard it. Curiously, we often apply this selective blindness to our own relationships. We become accustomed to dealing with people who somehow take more from us than they give. Yes, I'm talking about those toxic relationships that, without you realizing it, drain your energy little by little. And here's what's curious. We often cling to them as if they were indispensable. I'm not just referring to romantic relationships. Toxic relationships can exist anywhere, in your family, in your friend group, at your workplace. And what's most interesting is that nobody forces you to maintain them. But there you are, tolerating them in silence, as if letting go would be an affront to the world. Why do we do this? Perhaps because we've been taught that breaking ties is a sign of weakness or insensitivity, as if eliminating someone from your life were an act of cruelty, when in reality it might be the greatest gesture of self-love you can perform. The Stoics teach us that we shouldn't worry about what we can't control. This also applies to the people around us. You can't control how others act, but you can control whether or not you want to. Keep them in your life. It's simple, but here's the difficult part: doing it in silence. Don't misunderstand me. It's not about silent revenge or feeling superior. It's simply a conscious decision to stop feeding a relationship that wears you down. Think about it. You don't need drama to eliminate what doesn't serve you. It's not necessary to announce to everyone that you're detoxifying yourself from certain people. Just let go. It's like stopping watering a plant that no longer flourishes. You do it calmly, knowing it's no longer part of your garden, and that's okay. The strategy is silence. Gradually reduce interactions. Stop seeking contact. Distance yourself. No grand gestures or fights are necessary. Just stop being available. It's liberating, not because you're turning your back on the world, but because you're prioritizing your well-being. Sometimes self-love isn't saying no out loud, but saying enough in silence. So how do you identify these relationships? It's simple. If every time you see a message from that person, you feel a knot in your stomach, if spending time with them leaves you more exhausted than a week of work, if you notice that you're always the one giving and never receiving, you already have your answer. When that becomes clear, begin the elimination process. No drama, no unnecessary explanations. Just move forward. This isn't about being cruel or holding grudges. It's about respecting yourself enough not to allow people to continue draining the energy you could use with people and activities that truly nourish you. In the end, the key is being honest with yourself and placing your well-being above guilt or fear of hurting others. Remember this clearly, my friend. Some people are like the wind. You feel them, but you can't hold on to them. You just need to let them pass. Number 3, self-destructive habits. Sometimes you catch yourself doing small things that, if you look closely, you know aren't taking you anywhere. These are actions that seem harmless at first, but without you realizing it, they gradually wear down your mental or physical peace. I've fallen into this trap more times than I'd like to admit. Small, self-destructive habits that go unnoticed, like a constant drip that over time erodes even rock. But what happens when these habits are the rocks in our daily lives? How do we eliminate them without making a scene? First, you need to recognize them, and that's the trick. Pointing out what bothers us in others is one thing, but identifying it in ourselves is different. You wake up in the morning and without thinking, you reach for your phone. Not for something important, of course, but out of pure habit, as if your finger is programmed to swipe the screen before your brain has even woken up. It seems harmless, right? Until you realize you've lost 20 minutes of your morning immersed in nothing, with your mind already saturated before you've even gotten out of bed. This is just one example. We do this with so many other things. That extra coffee that wasn't necessary, that conversation you knew you shouldn't have had, that series that adds nothing to you, but you keep watching out of inertia. These are small things that over time can create a big hole in your well-being. Now, eliminating these habits is another story. Let's be honest. How many times have you promised to leave something behind and ended up doing it even more? Like when you say, starting tomorrow, I'll really begin. And then tomorrow comes, and it's just another day of excuses. This is where the Stoic mindset shines. These ancient Roman philosophers believed that great transformations don't happen all at once, but in small, silent, almost imperceptible steps. You don't need to shout to the world that you're going to change, nor make a grand gesture. You just need to start observing. The key is in awareness. When you notice your hand reaching for your phone without reason, stop. You don't need to throw your phone out the skik window, though that might be cathartic. Just set it aside and do something else. Something as simple as taking a deep breath and stretching. When you feel the urge to have that third cup of coffee, ask yourself, do I really need this? Or is it just habit? If it's just inertia, leave the cup. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Stopping at the right moment, without drama, without needing monumental changes. Eliminating self-destructive habits doesn't mean you'll become a perfect person overnight. We all have our small internal battles, and that's okay. The point is to approach them with a simple strategy: silence and consistency. Like a drop that instead of wearing away gradually polishes. And if someday you feel like you're not making progress, remember this: what seems like a small effort today, over time transforms into a great victory. Perhaps you won't notice the results immediately, but it's like planting a seed. One day, without much fanfare, it grows and becomes a tree. The same happens with these small adjustments. So next time you identify a habit that hurts you more than it helps you, eliminate it in silence. You don't need to announce it or make a big show. Just let it go. Step by step, drop by drop. As Epictetus said, true change doesn't shout, it simply happens. Number 4, the desire to control everything. Have you ever felt that if you don't have absolute control over everything around you, the world will fall apart? I understand. We like to believe that if we organize every detail to the millimeter and prevent all unforeseen events, life will be like a perfectly tuned machine where nothing can go wrong. What an absurd idea, right? But even so, we find ourselves trapped in this mental game, convinced that we can dominate everything that happens to us. It's a trap, a mirage, and the worst part is that the more we try to grasp control, the more we feel we're losing our balance. So let me ask you, what if you let go of this obsessive need for control? You know, that compulsion to want everything to be exactly as you imagine. The desire to control everything is nothing more than a mental prison, one we build brick by brick every time we believe that with enough effort, things will turn out exactly as planned. But you know what? The universe doesn't work that way. Stoic philosophy, with its timeless wisdom that remains so relevant today, teaches us that the key isn't in controlling what we can't, but in letting go of the unnecessary and focusing on what truly depends on us. Think about it. We try to control the weather, others' opinions, people's reactions, the results of our efforts, everything that's actually not in our hands. It's like trying to hold back the tide with your hands, a complete waste of energy. Yet we do it constantly. And the worst part, every time something doesn't go as we expected, we get frustrated, we get irritated, as if it were a cosmic injustice. What irony, isn't it? Imagine you're carrying a backpack. Every time you try to control something outside your reach, you put a stone inside it. At first, maybe you don't even feel the weight, but over time the backpack becomes unbearably heavy. In the end, that load crushes you. Wouldn't it be better to get rid of those stones, to make space for what really matters, for what you can actually control? Your emotions, your actions, your choices. The rest, let go. For a long time, I myself worried obsessively about predicting everything that could go wrong in my life. If I had a meeting, I'd plan for every possible uncomfortable question. If I scheduled an outing with friends, I'd worry about the place, the weather, anything that could go off plan. It was exhausting. And you know what happened? Most of the things I worried about never happened. In the end, I realized that this attempt to predict everything didn't give me more control. It just gave me more anxiety. So I started letting go. Little by little, I learned to trust the process more. And what happened? Things continued to happen, some good, others not so much. But I felt lighter because I'd stopped carrying what wasn't my responsibility. Trusting in life doesn't mean being passive or irresponsible. It's about accepting with maturity that there are things beyond our hands, and that's okay. Eliminate in silence this need to control everything. Make space for the unexpected, for surprises, for what's beyond your reach. This doesn't mean you should simply settle and watch life pass by. It's about releasing the weight and accepting that there's a part of the journey that doesn't depend on you. And you know what else? It's liberating. Remember, sometimes letting go is the most powerful way to take control. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, true control lies in the capacity to release the uncontrollable. Number 5, unrealistic expectations. I don't know about you, but I spent a good part of my life believing I needed to be perfect. Nobody told me this directly, but it was in the air, hovering between well-intentioned comments, looks of approval, and that constant silent comparison with others. I grew up with the firm conviction that meeting others' expectations, and worse still my own, was synonymous with success. What a big lie. If you stop to think, trying to fulfill unrealistic expectations is like trying to fill a bottomless well with a leaky bucket. You never finish. You're always exhausted. And in the end, all that's left is a sad puddle of frustration at your feet. What's most curious, many of these expectations aren't even ours. They were built by others, family, friends, society, and we accepted them because in our quest to be better, we decided we needed to fulfill them. Do a quick exercise. How many times have you felt disappointed for not achieving something you didn't actually even want? That's right. We impose goals on ourselves so high that if we fail, we feel useless. If I'm not the best at my job, the perfect partner, the ideal friend, the exemplary child, what's left of me in the end? These expectations end up weighing more than our own actions. It's like running a marathon with a backpack full of stones. You move forward more slowly, you get tired sooner, and even if you reach the end, you feel like you did it dragging your feet. What's the point? This is where Stoic philosophy comes in with a brilliant insight. According to the Stoics, you can't control what others think of you, nor guarantee that the universe will act in your favor. What you can control is how you react to it. The key, then, is to reduce the load. Lower those expectations that suffocate you. If you expect less from yourself and others, it doesn't mean you're settling. It means you're freeing yourself. You're no longer trapped by the constant pressure to correspond to the impossible. You're simply existing and moving forward. Of course, this magic doesn't happen overnight. I'm not saying to throw all your expectations out the window at once. Think of it like cleaning out a closet full of old clothes. First, look at what doesn't fit you anymore, what you never really liked, and start getting rid of things one piece at a time. Sometimes you hesitate to let go of a shirt because you think you'll use it someday, but deep down you know you won't. With expectations, it's the same. Start by eliminating those that don't belong to you. Then review your own and ask yourself, are these realistic? You don't. Need to keep all of them. Something that can help reduce expectations without creating drama is changing the way you talk to yourself. For example, instead of saying I need to do everything perfectly, try I'll do the best I can with what I have right now. It seems simple, but it's liberating. You open space for error, which is human, and for the possibility of improving without constant pressure. Another infallible trick, avoid telling everyone your plans. The less noise you make, the fewer expectations others create about what you should achieve. After all, external expectations are just noise. Eliminate in silence what doesn't serve you. You'll notice that things begin to flow much more naturally. Letting go of expectations isn't giving up. It's an act of wisdom. Instead of focusing on what you should do or be, concentrate on what you really want and what's under your control. Less expectations, more freedom. Engrave this in your mind, my friend. The less you expect, the lighter you become. Number 6, the need to always be right. Have you noticed there's an almost compulsive need to always be right, to be the person who knows everything? It's as if every conversation were a battlefield, and victory meant proving you're right. A silent but relentless war. The worst part, this war isn't with others, but with yourself. Every time you insist on having the last word, it's as if you need to convince yourself that your value depends on it. Doesn't it get tiring? Because, honestly, I'm already exhausted from this endless race. We've been taught to believe we always need to have the right answer, as if being wrong were synonymous with weakness. Society, social media, even family gatherings reinforce the idea that failure is failure. But I'll tell you a secret. Sometimes being right is the least important thing in life. Stoic philosophy teaches us to accept what we can't control. And you know something? You can't control others' perception of you. This endless struggle to prove you know everything doesn't lead anywhere. It just leaves you more anxious, more frustrated, and at the end of the day, more alone. Ask yourself, what do I gain by always being right? An invisible medal? It doesn't seem worth the effort, does it? It's like carrying a suitcase full of unnecessary stones. With each discussion or imposed opinion, you put another stone in there until the weight becomes unbearable and you wonder why you're so exhausted. The answer is simple. You're wearing yourself out over something that has no real value. Next time you feel that urgency to demonstrate you're right, try staying silent. Not out of resignation, but out of liberation. It's like dropping a pen you've been holding for hours without realizing it. When you let go, you feel a relief you didn't even know you needed. With the need to always be right, the same thing happens. When you release that burden, you realize you were trapped in a war you didn't even want to fight. So how do you let go of this need? Accept that you don't need to know everything. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay not to have a formed opinion about everything. You're not competing in a wisdom contest. Learn to truly listen, not to refute, but to understand. There's a huge difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is a biological function. Listening is an art. When you listen with attention, the anxiety to impose your point of view disappears. Appreciate silence. Sometimes the best argument is simply allowing others to have the last word. Not all conversations need a winner, because in the end, is it worth always being right at the expense of your tranquility? Not at all. Next time you're in a conversation and feel that urge to correct or impose your opinion, take a deep breath, let go. The peace you'll feel will be infinitely more valuable than any momentary victory. If it's any consolation, remember the Stoics. They knew that true wisdom isn't in being right, but in knowing when to let go. As Seneca said, true knowledge isn't in winning all battles, but in knowing when not to fight. Number 7, digital noise. Have you noticed how you're surrounded by digital noise? I'm not just talking about cars in the street or the neighbor drilling a wall, but that other noise, the one that's in your pocket, in your hands, in your eyes, social media, endless notifications, messages that never stop coming. It seems like everything is designed to distract you, to keep you in a constant state of alert. And there you are, thinking you're in control, when in reality it's digital chaos that controls you. The reality is that we live in an era where silence is a luxury, but that luxury isn't as unattainable as it seems. The first step is understanding what's really stealing your attention, because in reality, there are things you should eliminate in silence from your life. And yes, this is possible. It's just not as obvious as it seems. I'll be honest, digital chaos doesn't disappear just because you close an app. That would be like trying to put out a fire with a glass of water. What you need is to be radical, like the Stoics, who knew that inner peace was what really mattered, and they didn't achieve it by letting themselves be carried away by external distractions. So what should you eliminate in silence from your life? Let's go. First, social media. Yes, I know it seems cliché, but believe me, the more accounts you follow, the more noise you create. I'm not saying to disconnect completely, but think. Do you really need to know what your friend's sister's friend's cousin is doing? Eliminate without mercy everything that doesn't add value to you. And if you can, do a digital cleanse from time to time. Like organizing a closet. Take out what doesn't fit anymore, what never should have been there in the first place. Second, notifications. Here things get interesting. Why do you allow your phone to interrupt you every 2 minutes? Every time it vibrates or makes a sound, your brain jumps. This doesn't just steal your time, it also steals your mental energy. Deactivate all non-essential notifications. At first, you might feel a certain anxiety, as if you're missing something. But later, when you realize how good it is to have control over when and how you check your phone, you'll thank me. Third, the fear of missing out. The great modern villain, FOMO. We live with the sensation that if we're not connected, we'll miss something important. But here's an uncomfortable truth. What really matters isn't on the screen. It's around you, in the people, in the moments that pass unnoticed while you're stuck on the latest viral meme. Eliminate that fear. Let go of the need to be in everything. Because the more you try to embrace the digital world, the more you lose what's really worthwhile. Once you get rid of that unnecessary noise, something magical happens. You begin to hear what really matters. Digital silence is the first step to reconnecting with yourself, with your ideas, with your true priorities. This is where Stoic philosophy comes in. You can't control what happens outside you, but you can decide how you react to it. When you eliminate digital noise, everything else becomes clearer. My advice is this: choose silence. Not as an absence of noise, but as a conscious presence of what you really want in your life. Because in the end, that's the true luxury of our era. As Gandhi said, peace doesn't come when the noise fades, but when you decide to listen to yourself. Number 8, negative thought patterns. Have you stopped to notice how negative thoughts enter your mind almost without making noise, as if they didn't want anything? They appear, and suddenly they're in command of everything. They're like those neighbors who arrive without warning and, worse, don't leave. The most frustrating thing, often you hand them the key, not because you want to, but because they've convinced you their presence is inevitable, a part of your daily routine. But what if I told you that you can change the lock? Let's speak clearly. These thoughts are nothing more than destructive patterns that end up shaping your actions, and certainly not in the best way. You've probably caught yourself thinking things like, "Why does everything go wrong for me?" or "I'll never succeed." And of course, when these thoughts repeat themselves again and again, you end up believing them. And what you believe, you end up acting on. It's like planting a poison tree and then wondering why the fruits aren't edible. What's curious is that these negative thoughts don't necessarily reflect reality, but they feel as real as the ground you stand on. This is where Stoic philosophy enters with its brutal simplicity. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. It seems so simple, but in practice, it's something that frequently escapes us. We allow these mental patterns to dictate our emotions and actions, when true freedom lies in taking the reins of our responses. And where do you start? The first key is silence. Yes, you read that right. Eliminating in silence these negative thoughts. You don't need to make a spectacle trying to push them away. Just start recognizing when they appear, identifying them, and not feeding them. The more attention you give them, the more power they have. Think of it like a fly in the room. If you obsess about catching it, you'll only agitate it more. What if you ignore it until it gets tired of flying? Second, question your thoughts. When a destructive thought arises, ask yourself, is this true? Is everything really going wrong, or is it just an exaggerated perception? Often you'll realize they're inflated ideas with no real basis. And if there's some truth, you can start thinking about solutions instead of staying stuck in the problem. Third, detachment. I'm not saying you should become a monk on top of a mountain, but start taking emotional distance from your thoughts. They're not you. Just because something passes through your head doesn't mean it needs to stay there. This requires practice, but little by little you'll learn to see them for what they really are, clouds in a sky that remains steady. Negative thoughts are one of those small things you should eliminate in silence from your life. They don't need fanfare, just careful internal focus, patience, and questioning. Because at the end of the day, what you think shapes what you do, and what you do defines who you are. As Brian Tracy well said, thoughts aren't facts, but if you believe in them, they become your reality. Number 9, physical and mental clutter. Sometimes it happens that we wake up and feel the world is a little heavier than normal. You look around and realize it's not just a feeling. Your space is loaded with things, objects, piles of papers, clothes thrown on the chair, and somehow your head also seems like a disorganized drawer. I don't know if this happens to you, but when my surroundings are a mess, I feel like my mind follows the same path. Physical and mental clutter, although it may not seem so, are more connected than we'd like to admit. There's something profoundly exhausting about the disorder around us. Our disorganized space directly affects our mental clarity. The Stoics, for example, spoke about the importance of focusing on the essential, of eliminating the superfluous. And if you think about it, clutter is exactly the opposite of that. It's everything that's unnecessary, that distracts us and takes us away from what's serious. The accumulation of things doesn't just occupy physical space, it also consumes energy. Each object out of place, each paper that should have been thrown away months ago, each thing blocking your path, all of this isn't just accumulated material, it's noise. A noise that fills the mind with small pending tasks and worries you didn't even know you had. You know that feeling of wanting to organize something, but not even knowing where to start. That's the secret. It's not about organizing everything at once, but about eliminating in silence what no longer serves. The first step is simple. Observe. Look around and ask yourself, do I really need all of this? If you haven't used something in a long time, you probably don't need it anymore. But it's not just about material things. Mental clutter works the same way. Sometimes we accumulate thoughts, worries, and feelings like someone who keeps broken objects, thinking they'll be useful someday. The truth is that keeping all this just weighs us down. So what to do? Eliminate in silence, little by little. You don't need to make a big spectacle. You don't need to announce to the world. Just let go of what no longer serves, both physically and mentally. Sometimes silence is an act of rebellion in a world full of noise. If there are people in your life who cause you discomfort, projects that no longer motivate you, thoughts that only drain you, get rid of them. No drama, no explanations, no more turns than necessary. Just let them go. The exterior reflects the interior. Remember that often external order reflects internal order. If you start bringing a little clarity to your surroundings, you'll see that little by little that clarity will also reach your mind. It's not magic, it's a process. It's like when you decide to clean out a drawer and suddenly you feel lighter, because in the end, everything in its place is one less worry. Each object you release is a step toward a lighter and clearer life. The Stoics don't complicate their lives with the unnecessary. They knew the key was to focus on what really mattered and let the rest pass. As simple as that. Living in a world full of physical and mental clutter is like walking in a maze with no exit. But when you start getting rid of what you don't need, you discover that the exit was always there. You just couldn't see it because of the excess. If you want mental peace, start organizing what's around you. Do it without haste, without noise, but constantly. Your mind will thank you. As Nelson Mandela said, when the noise quiets, the essential becomes clearer. Number 10, unnecessary comparisons. Sometimes I wonder why we have this habit of comparing ourselves with others. Come on, don't make excuses. We all do it. But tell me, do you really think this serves any purpose? It's like running in a competition where the others don't even know they're participating. And the worst part, they probably don't even care. Meanwhile, you're there in your head, measuring every step, every stumble, every small advance, but not yours, others. Comparing yourself is like trying to win a singing contest using someone else's voice. It doesn't make sense. You have your own melody, your own rhythm, but you insist on following someone else's score. The problem is that this seemingly harmless habit gradually undermines your self-esteem. You wake up one day feeling you're not good enough, that you're not fast enough, that you're not enough at something, all because you're too busy looking sideways instead of focusing on what's in front of you. The truth is that life isn't a speed race. It's more like a boat crossing. You choose the course, the stops, and the rhythm. But if you're too concentrated on the boats passing by you, what you achieve is only to divert your own rudder. What's most curious, while you observe someone else's boat, they're probably doing the same with you. That's how this absurd comparison works. Everyone looks at others, but nobody enjoys their own journey. Stop comparing yourself and do it in silence. Eliminate this practice as one of the things you take out of life without making fanfare. It's like getting rid of an old shirt you don't wear anymore. Nobody needs to know, but you'll feel the difference. Comparing yourself with others isn't just useless. It's a betrayal against yourself. It's like telling your inner self that it's not enough, that you need to be someone else to be worth something. But think about it. This philosophy doesn't make sense. The Stoics already said it. The only valid comparison is with who you were yesterday. So what to do when comparison begins? Don't try to silence the voice, question it. When you notice that internal voice starting to compare, listen to what it says, but question its logic. Why are you comparing yourself with that person? What exactly makes you feel inferior? Remember what you've already achieved. Take a pause and reflect on your own progress and conquests. Often, we forget how far we've already walked when we're constantly looking at others. Another strategy that works is practicing gratitude. Yes, I know it sounds like worn advice, but I guarantee it's powerful. Be thankful for what you have, for what you've conquered, for who you are. When you focus on what you have instead of what's lacking or what others possess, something shifts. Suddenly the weight of comparison begins to disappear, and you realize the only path that matters is yours. Life is too short to waste time competing in an imaginary race with others. Comparing yourself only distracts you from what really matters. Living your life at your own rhythm, with your own rules. And when you start doing that, you realize how liberating it is. My friend, I'll leave you with a reflection that helped me a lot in the most difficult moments. When you stop seeing yourself through others' eyes, you discover who you really are. Number 11, the illusion of multitasking. We live in a culture that celebrates busyness, that glorifies the idea of doing 10 things at once. We've been sold the lie that multitasking is a skill, that being constantly busy means being productive, that juggling multiple commitments simultaneously is something to aspire to. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Multitasking is a myth, a dangerous, energy-draining, quality-destroying myth. The human brain isn't designed to focus on multiple complex tasks simultaneously. What we call multitasking is actually rapid task switching, and every switch comes with a cognitive cost. You lose focus, you lose depth, you lose the quality of your attention. The Stoics understood something profound about attention and presence. They knew that excellence comes from focused, sustained attention on what's in front of you. Marcus Aurelius didn't try to govern Rome while simultaneously writing philosophy while eating dinner. He gave his full attention to each task as it came. When you're constantly divided, jumping from one thing to another, you never fully inhabit any moment. You're never truly present. You're always somewhere else mentally, thinking about the next thing, worrying about what you left undone, planning ahead. Eliminate in silence the illusion that you need to do everything at once. Start practicing single tasking. When you're working on something, close all other tabs, both literal and mental. When you're with someone, be fully with them. When you're eating, actually taste your food. This singular focus isn't just about productivity, though you will be more productive. It's about experiencing life more fully, more richly, more deeply. In a world that constantly fragments our attention, choosing to focus becomes an act of rebellion. It's choosing depth over breadth, quality over quantity, presence over performance. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to do everything, you often accomplish more of what actually matters. Number 12, the fear of being alone. In our hyper-connected world, being alone has become something to avoid, something almost frightening. We fill every silent moment with noise, podcasts, music, scrolling, calling someone, anything to avoid being with just ourselves. But the Stoics knew that solitude isn't something to fear. It's something to cultivate. It's in solitude that we come to know ourselves, that we process our experiences, that we develop our own thoughts, rather than just consuming others' thoughts. Epictetus spent years in solitude studying philosophy. Seneca regularly retreated from public life to think and write. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in the solitude of military campaigns, conversations with himself about how to live well. They understood that time alone isn't empty or wasted. It's essential for developing wisdom, clarity, and self-knowledge. When you're constantly surrounded by others, constantly consuming media, constantly connected, you never get the silence necessary to hear your own voice. You don't know what you actually think because you're always hearing what everyone else thinks. You don't know what you actually want because you're always responding to what others want from you. Eliminate in silence the fear of being alone. Start creating deliberate solitude in your life. Take walks alone without your phone. Sit in a room with nothing but your thoughts for 15 minutes. Go to a cafe and just observe. Spend an evening without any entertainment, just you and a blank page or your thoughts. At first, this will be uncomfortable. Your mind will resist. You'll feel antsy, bored, anxious to fill the silence. That discomfort is precisely why this practice is so valuable. You're discovering what you've been running from. You're learning to be comfortable with yourself, which is one of the most liberating skills you can develop. When you're comfortable alone, you stop making desperate decisions to Avoid solitude. You stop staying in bad relationships because you fear being single. You stop filling your calendar with meaningless commitments just to avoid an empty evening. Solitude teaches you that you're enough, that you can be your own good company, that you don't need constant external stimulation to feel okay. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit or rejecting relationships. It means coming to relationships from a place of wholeness rather than need, from choice rather than fear. Number 13. The belief that change should be fast. We live in an instant gratification culture. We want immediate results, rapid transformation, overnight success. We've been conditioned to believe that if change isn't happening quickly, something's wrong. But the Stoics understood that real, lasting transformation is slow. It's the accumulation of small choices repeated over time. Marcus Aurelius didn't become a wise philosopher-emperor through one moment of insight. It was decades of daily practice, of repeatedly choosing to align his actions with his principles, of falling short and trying again. Seneca didn't develop his wisdom in a weekend workshop. It was years of study, reflection, experience, and refinement. When you expect rapid change, you set yourself up for disappointment. You try something for a week or a month, don't see dramatic results, and conclude it doesn't work. You abandon the practice before it has time to take root and bear fruit. Eliminate in silence the expectation that transformation should be fast. Replace it with a commitment to consistent practice over time. When you start eliminating things from your life, whether it's toxic relationships, negative thought patterns, or physical clutter, understand that the benefits will accumulate gradually. You might not notice much difference after 1 week, but after 3 months, 6 months, a year, you'll look back and barely recognize your former life. This is how real change works. It's not the dramatic before and after transformation. It's the slow, almost imperceptible shift that compounds over time until one day you realize you're living a completely different life. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small progress. Trust the process even when you can't yet see the results. The Stoics called this playing the long game, having a vision that extends beyond immediate gratification to the kind of person you're becoming over time. Number 14. Perfectionism disguised as standards. There's a difference between having high standards and being a perfectionist. Standards are about excellence, about doing your best, about creating quality. Perfectionism is about fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of being revealed as inadequate. Perfectionism keeps you from starting because the conditions aren't perfect yet. It keeps you from finishing because it's never quite good enough. It keeps you from sharing your work because what if people criticize it? The Stoics weren't perfectionists. They were pragmatists. They believed in doing your best with what you have where you are, and then accepting the results. They believed in progress over perfection, in daily practice over ideal outcomes. Seneca wrote, "If you wait for perfect conditions, you will never get anything done." Eliminate in silence the perfectionism that's masquerading as having standards. Start before you feel ready. Share your work before it feels perfect. Make the decision with the information you have rather than waiting for absolute certainty. This doesn't mean lowering your standards or not caring about quality. It means understanding that excellence exists in the real world with constraints and limitations, not in some imaginary realm where everything is perfect. It means valuing progress over perfection, action over ideal conditions, done over perfect. When you let go of perfectionism, you free enormous amounts of energy that were being consumed by anxiety, overthinking, and self-criticism. You can channel that energy into actually doing things, creating things, moving forward. And ironically, when you let go of perfectionism, your work often gets better, because you're actually producing and learning rather than endlessly planning and revising in your head. Number 15, the need to fill every moment. We've become terrified of empty space, both in our schedules and in our minds. Every moment must be filled with something, an activity, an input, a stimulation. We schedule ourselves to the minute. We fill every silence with sound, every pause with scrolling, every gap with busyness. But the Stoics understood something we've forgotten. Empty space isn't emptiness. It's potential. It's where creativity emerges, where rest happens, where integration occurs. When you fill every moment, you give yourself no time to process, to reflect, to simply be. You're constantly in input mode, never in integration mode. You're always consuming, never creating. You're perpetually busy, but never actually living. Eliminate in silence the need to fill every moment. Create gaps in your schedule. Leave buffers between meetings. Have mornings or evenings with nothing planned. Sit in silence without feeling the need to fill it. At first, this will feel uncomfortable, even wasteful. You've been conditioned to believe that every moment must be optimized, that downtime is wasted time. But you'll discover that these empty spaces become the most valuable parts of your day. They're where you process what you've learned. They're where insights emerge. They're where you reconnect with yourself and remember what actually matters to you. Empty space allows you to hear your own thoughts rather than just echoing everyone else's. It allows you to feel your own feelings rather than staying constantly distracted from them. It allows you to make conscious choices rather than just reacting to whatever stimulus is in front of you. The Stoics practiced what they called otium, which isn't leisure in our modern sense, but rather purposeful rest, time for contemplation and reflection. They understood that a life of constant action without pause for reflection is a life lived on autopilot, not a life lived with intention. We've reached the end of this journey through 15 things you should eliminate in silence from your life if you want to experience true freedom. I hope these insights have resonated with you, challenged you, and inspired you to look at your life with fresh eyes. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate everything overnight. That would just be creating a different kind of pressure and expectation. The goal is to start becoming aware of what's weighing you down, what's draining your energy, what's keeping you from living the life you actually want to live. Then quietly, without drama or announcement, begin letting go, little by little, one thing at a time. Some of these eliminations will be easy. Others will be difficult. Some will bring immediate relief. Others will require patience as the benefits accumulate over time. But each thing you let go of creates space. Space for what truly matters. Space for growth. Space for peace. Space for the life you want to create, rather than the life that was imposed on you by habit, fear, or others' expectations. The ancient Stoics gave us these tools not because they had achieved some perfect life, but because they too struggled with the same challenges we face. They too dealt with toxic relationships, negative thoughts, the desire for control, the weight of others' expectations. They were human, as you are human, but they chose to engage with that humanity in a particular way, with awareness, with courage, with wisdom, and with a commitment to living according to their own values rather than being tossed about by external circumstances. You have that same choice available to you right now, today, in this moment. You can choose to start eliminating in silence the things that don't serve you, not with anger or resentment, but with clarity and purpose. You can choose freedom over familiarity, growth over comfort, authenticity over approval. If you've watched this far, it means you're ready for this work. I encourage you now to take one concrete action. Choose one of these 15 things and commit to starting the elimination process today. Not perfectly, just genuinely. See what happens. Notice what changes. Learn from the experience. I want to express my deep gratitude for joining me on this journey. I'd love to hear about your experience. What resonated with you? What are you going to start eliminating from your life? Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. And now, as a keyword for this shared moment, write in the comments, "I choose freedom through elimination." Let's create a wave of intentional living, showing that we're capable of profound transformation through the simple act of letting go of what no longer serves us. Thank you for being part of this journey. Remember, you're not defined by what you carry. You're defined by what you choose to let go. And that power, that ability to choose, is something no one can take from you. The weight you've been